What's up guys, Penguin Overlord here, and welcome back to Ghost Recon Breakpoint. In this video I'm going to review the Pathfinder class, the class that was newly released with the Red Patriot DLC for Ghost Recon Breakpoint. So as always we're going to go over the class technique, the class item, and the class proficiencies, so let's get started. So the class technique is the Amorous interface. This basically allows you to summon a friendly Azrael drone, which can do a whole lot of things for you. I do want to make a quick note, though, that contrary to the in-game lore about this ability, it does not actually hack a Azrael drone. So if there's an Azrael drone flying above you and you try to use this ability, you're not going to be able to turn it friendly. It summons a regular Amorous drone for you, and I tried it, and it did not give me the results I wanted, let's just say. So yes, so this drone can do all of the normal things that drones can do. You can use it to mark enemies manually, you can use it to order sync shots, but it can also do quite a few other things as well. It can scan a relatively large area. I believe it's about the same area as the Echelon's marking ability. I think the Sharpshooter's class item does mark a larger area, but that could just be a perspective issue. But it does mark a decent sized area, as you can see in this repeating GIF. You also have a lure, so that you can lure out enemies to a certain position. It does seem to be a relatively short range for that, though, so you do kind of want to make sure that the lure happens a bit close to the enemy you're trying to lure. You can also fire off a flashbang, and that'll stun the enemies and make them unable to see. And all those preceding three items are unlimited use, so you can use them over and over again as long as the technique duration lasts. And you also have the ability to fire a missile strike 5 times at maximum at the enemies. This is not an EMP strike, as some, myself included, were led to believe by the trailer for Red Patriot. It is a missile strike. So if you've ever wanted to fire off like a Predator drone missile at an enemy and from high above the ground and just kill them that way, you can do it now with this class technique. Now, the missile strike has varying levels of effectiveness on the enemy drones of this game. You can one-shot the flying drones if you manage to get lucky and get a hit on them. However, they do fly around a bunch once alerted, so they're very, very difficult to hit once they are alerted and they start spazzing out and flying around. So I don't necessarily recommend using the Amorous drone missile strike to take those out. I recommend using sync shot on your AI teams, or shotguns or LMGs to burn them down. As far as the smaller ground drones, such as the Aiming drones, the missile strike has varying levels of effectiveness depending on how accurate you are with it. If you score a direct hit on the ground drones, it will kill them in one shot. However, if you're a little bit off, it'll generally require 2 shots to kill them, because it'll still be an explosion radius, but it won't necessarily be a direct hit. If you're really bad with your aim or just unlucky, sometimes I've had it require 3 shots in order to take it down, but that's assuming really bad misses. As far as behemoth drones, I don't recommend using this against behemoth drones at all, because it just doesn't do a whole ton of damage to them, and all it'll do is just basically blow off its armor, and the behemoth drone will instantly know where you are and nail you with rockets and gas drones. And even if you don't die, you'll be automatically cut off from access with the Amorous drone. So that's kind of not good. So I don't recommend using this against behemoths. Again, the tried and true combo of using Panther with the drone spray and the 2 LMGs is still the best way to take out behemoth drones in this game. So it's a very good support tool for your team if you're playing with human teammates. It does have significant use in single player as well, but most of the time I was just using scan and strike to take out key personnel such as generators, radio operators, lieutenant commanders, so that strike feature is really good for some of the faction missions where you have to kill a sentinel commander. You can just pop that drone off and fire a missile, and you're out of there. Mission complete. Just like in Wildlands with the explosive drone. Another thing I do want to note is that this drone also has a high magnification zoom. So you've got 1 power, 3 power, and 15 power, which is pretty amazing. We have not seen, at least in recent memory with Wildlands and Breakpoint, and I don't think even Future Soldier had 15 power magnification. So that was pretty cool to have in the game. I do hope that Ubisoft one day adds higher magnification to the scopes. It would be really awesome to see a 15 power magnification scope as a side note for sniping at longer ranges, such as like 400 to 600 meters. So yeah, that's the Amros interface. It's a very good support tool. In single player, I mostly just use it to scan the area and strike key personnel. Do note that obviously it will make a loud noise, and it will alert the enemy. So basically only use this when you or your team, if you're playing with other people, has decided it's time to go loud. Now, this class technique is only refilled by the uplink protocol, which you get through tactical caches, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, it's kind of a mixed bag as to, well, there's good news and bad news in regards to this. The bad news is you can't kill enemies and have it refill the technique, unlike, say, the Engineer class, which also has a drone, but while that technique is more quickly refilled by killing drones and doing explosive damage, you can at least slowly recharge it by just getting regular kills in the game. That is not the case with this. You have to get these uplink protocols, which, let's talk about it now. It refuels your entire skill gauge, and of course it's the only way for your Pathfinder class to fill the skill gauge. So that's the bad news. It's the only way you can recharge this class technique. The other bad news is that, well, this is kind of quasi-bad news. The bad news is you can't get it through resting in the bivouac. You can only get these through the tactical caches. The good news is that one, the tactical caches in the game are ubiquitous. They are pretty much everywhere. Pretty much, you can find at least one nearby an enemy base. So that's good news. So you can basically, no matter where you go, you can always get another one, and I've never had any significant issues with running out of uplink protocols. You can find them very easily, especially once you upgrade to the better supplies in the tactical caches when you reach rank 6. More on that later when we talk about tactical caches. The other good thing about this is that you can basically use this repeatedly. So after your Amoros drone basically is done, the technique ends, you can basically immediately refuel that technique and keep firing missiles at the enemy should it be necessary to do so. So that's kind of the good news, bad news side of it. On one hand, it is very easy to get uplink protocols. The bad news is you have to do a bunch of looting to get it. So for those of you who just don't really like looting in a Ghost Recon game, you're not going to necessarily like this. That being said, I didn't really find it too much to be an issue, and this is coming from someone who's kind of gone over the whole looting thing in Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and honestly, I just basically play in immersive mode right now, unless in the rare occasion I'm playing the raid. Now, to talk about the class proficiencies, we have, first off, the wild metabolism, which is that's what I think about mostly. So basically, you start off when you first unlock Pathfinder class, you have 50% to your ration effects and ration durations. This gets upgraded to 100% at level 2. So basically, if you have the advanced ration, instead of having it at 30 minutes, it will be at 60 minutes, and the effect will be doubled. It's okay. Honestly, I barely use the rations to begin with. This does make them more useful and more practical to use, especially if you got the advanced versions. So I have been using them in my testing of the Pathfinder class, but honestly, it's something that I could take or leave. This will be good, for, I think, for, I guess, more immersive gameplay, where if you wanted to use the rations, as part of an immersive thing, so that way your character is constantly eating and staying hydrated, this would be cool. You wouldn't have to necessarily do this as much. It's not that noteworthy to me personally. Now, the tactical caches, we did touch on it briefly earlier, but to go into more detail about it, these tactical caches give you not just uplink protocols, but also various weapon parts, such as the standard weapon parts, and it goes all the way on to elite weapon parts. And of course, they come in various quantities. Standard usually is 10, and then elite's usually 2, and in between you'll find those different quantities for the mid-grade weapon parts. So it's useful if you don't like dealing with the gear score system and dismantling weapons, and if you don't like hunting drones and trying to get weapon parts from them. It does serve a purpose for the more immersive mode players who don't really like fighting drones all that much. So that is kind of a neat feature added to the game. And of course, it also added several cosmetic items and 2 weapons in the game, the Mark 17 Scout and the AUG Scout, although as of this recording, I have not been able to find the AUG Scout. There may be some sort of glitch in the game that does not allow it to drop. I did hear something about the regular AUG dropping from tactical caches from the people who played the loot version. I didn't really check that out because I basically never played the loot version of the game anymore. But yeah, these do give you useful supplies, also skill credits. They are relatively small quantities, but considering how numerous they are in the game, I don't necessarily mind that. So it's a neat feature. It would be better, I think, if there were more, if in future updates there was more stuff added to these tactical caches to make them more worth finding, because honestly, at this point, I don't really need weapon parts or anything like that. It would be good if I was starting a new save file, but for my main character, I don't necessarily need more. But it's a neat feature, definitely worth playing with. And finally, for the Pathfinder class, we have the Scout Vision. So this is the white-hot thermal vision that a lot of people have been asking to be added into the game. The good news is it's added to the game. The bad news is it's not a universal thing like a lot of people wanted. So that's, for those of you who wanted white-hot thermal vision, I read the Reddits. I know people are kind of disappointed it's locked to one class. But that said, it is pretty cool. You can see it right here in this GIF. It's pretty neat. It activates before the regular night vision, and you also have the regular thermal vision available. It's a neat tool. Again, thermal helps you spot people in certain lighting conditions easier. It's pretty cool. I like it. So that covers the class abilities. Now, as far as perks and weapon setups go, I haven't really settled on a definite perk list because this class, at least to me, is so versatile. It's hard to find a set of perks that really fit what I want to do with it. In my way of thinking, the Pathfinder works in conjunction with the Sniper because you don't necessarily want to have the Pathfinder in the middle of the base fighting alongside enemies because you want them to use the drone to do scans and missile strikes. So I definitely recommend hanging back with the Pathfinder class and working with a Sniper. So as far as perks go, you definitely want Ballistic Advantage. That's the only exact perk I'm going to recommend as saying you have to have this if you're going to play Pathfinder, because Ballistic Advantage will obviously give you that extra range, and so that way your bullet physics aren't, your bullet drop isn't completely terrible. Now, the other two here are just kind of optional ones I picked. The way I see it, if you're going to be using the Amorous drone to strike down other enemy drones, I definitely recommend Drone Hunters. That way you can help support your team. And then I just picked Gunslinger just to pick Gunslinger. It's not super essential. You could honestly use any skill, any perk that you really want. Just custom tailor it to whatever you need to do with the Pathfinder. Now, as far as weapons go, I generally will run a DMR and an LMG. So the DMR is obviously going to be suppressed. It's going to be my main stealth weapon, working in conjunction with a sniper. I do recommend for this weapon to have a variable power sight, such as the VC-16 and the dual range sight. Unfortunately, the ACSS sight is not a variable sight, so either the dual range sight or the VC-16, so that way you can shoot enemies in close quarters if necessary, if in case an enemy patrol comes up on you in the sniper, or at long range. That's basically what I recommend. Yeah, and of course suppressor to maintain stealth. Also, I do recommend using an LMG, because in this class, I consider it to be a support class, and having an LMG is going to be super helpful with that, especially when combined with the SLX-5 sight or an ACOG if your LMG can support it, but definitely with the SLX-5 sight and ballistic advantage, because you can lay the hate on people fairly easily from longer ranges. You can see enemies better and hit them better, and that's just going to help your team out. And you can also suppress enemies, that way your human team, maybe your AI team if they're not smart enough, can maneuver around and shoot the enemies dead. So that's all good. So that's my take on the Pathfinder class. It's a very good support class. I definitely recommend playing it if you're with human teammates. I don't think it's necessarily the best solo class, because the AI teammates aren't super smart. You just don't have the same level of control over them as you do with human players. They aren't as smart as a human being, obviously. So it's still a fun class. I like playing with it, but it's not necessarily going to be my go-to if I'm trying to do something in Breakpoint. It's still going to be Assault or Echelon for me. But it's not a bad class by any means. It's just not my favorite personally. So that concludes my review of the Pathfinder class. I hope you guys enjoyed it, found it helpful. I'm Penguin Overlord, and I will catch you all next time. Take care, guys.